NBA DFS show with Jon Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, FA Nation? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook Show. We got 6 games here on a Monday to break it all down for you. My guy James was on today's NBA DFS Playbook. He's got all the latest news, updates, and things you need to know when it comes to tonight's slate. James, my guy, how we doing?
Doing well. Good little weekend, good stretch of DFS, fun slate today. Some news we're waiting on. Got some big news already, so should be a fun overall 6-game main slate. That, John, locks at 7 p.m. is done by 10 p.m. tonight, with the late night hammer being 8 p.m. Eastern. So that is some glorious.
By the time you are done with dinner, putting the dishes away, maybe putting like the kids to bed or something like that, you'll know where you are with this slate for the most part.
Well, like I'm gonna pause you there. Me and you may be eating dinner at that time.
Well, you eat dinner. Some people eat dinner around like 7 o'clock. I don't know. Like it's when do people eat dinner? I don't know. I've always eaten dinner at like 7.
Well, that's because you're like the most like laid back, like go with the flow human being I've ever met.
Even like growing up, my dinner was at like 7 for me.
Well, you get it from somebody, don't you?
I guess so.
Your parents. All
right, well, dinner at like 6. I don't know. By the time your evening chores are over, you're pretty much gonna have a good idea. You'd be like an hour and a half into the slate. So.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, I'll give you that.
All right,
I'll give you that.
Okay,
I'll give you that.
We got 6 games. We got Lakers, Charlotte kicking us off again, 7 o'clock, 226 total there. Hornets getting 12.5. Sacramento, Cleveland. We got to let them know. Tweet already. Cleveland giving 3.5. This opened at Cleveland giving 5.5. Now giving 3.5 here. Sacramento to Sacramento, 234.5 game total there. Dallas, Philly getting 3, 244 total there. Luka and Kyrie both playing for Dallas here tonight. Atlanta versus the Los Angeles Clippers. The Hawks are getting 4. Opened at them getting 2.5. So that spread is moving in the other direction. 243.5 there. No Paul George on the injury report for this one. Golden State, Brooklyn. Brooklyn's at home getting 1, 237.5 total. And then Toronto, New Orleans. Pelicans are giving 10.5, 230 total there.
Yeah, movement in Cleveland, Sacramento correlated to the Garland downgrade today would be my assumption. Coach Chris in the house. Donnie in the house. What's going on, y'all? The Clippers movement is definitely Paul George aided as well, not being on the injury report as you mentioned. Toronto, I'm interested in the Toronto New Orleans line because people betting the Toronto side, I guess, slightly. It's moved a point in their favor, despite RJ Barrett being ruled out in the middle of the day, and despite seeing Zion and Herb Jones going through shoot around this morning. So I find that a little bit interesting, that line has moved the way it has. It is a good spot for New Orleans. So not surprised to see the 10.5, but I'm surprised it didn't get larger with Zion, Herb going through shoot around and then Barrett being ruled out, but whatever. And it's funny how Dallas is only 3.5 point favorite with as healthy a team as they've been in a little bit, and Phillies, we don't know who's playing. It's Tyrese Maxey, and who is Toby playing? He has his second illness in a week. Who's going to be the center for Philly today? So a lot of interesting things on the Vegas front for sure.
Definitely a lot of injury things. He said again, the injury report out. Some guys we know that are already ruled out for not tonight. There's some guys that are questionable here. So a lot to dive into. We will go position by position. If you guys haven't already tossed a like down on today's show, please do so. Helps us out immensely with the YouTube algorithms. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that button as well. We go live here every day, 5 o'clock Eastern time. Get that alert when we go live so you never miss a live show. James, we go position by position here. Let's jump into the point guard position. Luka Doncic is $12K. Donovan Mitchell, $9,700. Trae Young, $95. Steph Curry, $94. Tyrese Maxey, $9,100. Those are your top 5 point guard price wise on the DraftKings main slate tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem getting to Luka if you want. Off the injury report completely today. Yes, Kyrie is back, but regardless of Kyrie's status, Luka 35% usage, 1.6 fantasy points per minute with Kyrie on the floor. You're not really going to find that anywhere else. So if you want to get to Luka, by all means. Donovan Mitchell is an elite play, becomes more elite if Darius Garland sits, because we know Point Donnie is a special player, and that would be a big pace-up spot for Cleveland. I think Trae Young is a very solid contrarian play today. I know the Clippers have been the league's best team over their last 30 games. They're 25-5. It's the best record they've had in franchise history. But Trae has been awesome in his own right. Without Clint Capella this year, I was surprised to see plus 3.2% usage bump. That's the biggest on the team, to a 34.1% usage rate. Averages 1.5 fantasy points per minute without Capella. So I like Trae Young. I like that they're home. I like that this game is, only a 4-point spread and 242.5 implied points. Now been up to 243.5 is the tied for the largest number on the slate. So I like Trae as a contrarian play. If you want to get to Steph in tournaments, by all means. The guy's been on a different planet of late. 4 30-point actual games in his last 5, including 60 actual his last time out in a loss. ...
Yeah.
And then Tyrese Maxey 91. I think he's a good play whether Tobias Harris plays or not. 1.4 fantasy points per minute, 38% usage with Toby. 41% usage, 1.45 fantasy points per minute without Toby. And Dallas, top 10 in pace, bottom 10 in defense. So if you want to get to Tyrese Maxey, we just saw 51 actual 2 games ago. So very, very loaded 9K and above tier.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think you need to not have any of them in your player pool. Like, you can have all of them in your player pool. My priorities would be Luka, if Garland's out, Mitchell, Trae Young, and Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah, I really have no arguments. Again, I think any one of those guys can be in play tonight. I do find it a little interesting. If you go look at our early run of ownership over at Fantasy Farm for tonight's slate, or the latest run rather, like a lot of Brooklyn guys. And you'd think that with all those Brooklyn guys, maybe you would bring a Steph Curry back, right? In order for all those Brooklyn plays to kind of pay it off, you think somebody in Golden State has to be keeping that game, competitive to a level. And yet Steph not nearly getting the love in that spot that maybe you would expect him to. Moving down into the mid-tier range, you got James Harden. We have Kyrie, as we mentioned. De'Aaron Fox still far too cheap at $8,300 for what his ceiling can be. DeJounte, Garland, as we mentioned, and Russell, along with Emmanuel quickly as your 8 and 7K guards. Garland, the minutes limit, we can't go there even if he was in. But do you have a favorite target of the 8 and 7K tier?
Yeah, I mean, Fox, you can obviously play Kyrie in tournaments. Harden, good spot. Of the tier, it would be Emmanuel quickly for me. With RJ Barrett off the floor this year, including obviously everyone else that's not there. Half the guys he didn't play with because he was involved in the trade. But 1.2 fantasy points per minute, 25% usage. And any worry about minutes after only being back for 2 games, that's kind of out of the window. 43 minutes in that double overtime game yesterday. It's a really good spot. In 3 of the last 4 games he's played in, he has looked really good in terms of passing, and we know he can score the basketball a lot. Have to love the 20 shots yesterday. Have to love the 16 shots. Only can imagine what it's going to be without RJ Barrett. I think that there's obviously the minutes for Toronto are concerning from yesterday, right? We talked about it on the previous show. Now they have to play New Orleans. New Orleans is a good team. New Orleans is also involved in blowouts like every other game. I feel like every time I'm targeting a Pelicans game, it's just been a massive spread and blowout.
Yeah.
And it's a 10.5 point spread. But if this game is going to stay competitive, it's 2 top half of the league teams in terms of totals. I like Emmanuel quickly the most of that tier.
Sure. Some everybody's popping in. Justin, Albert, I-40 Films want to know our favorite pun values. We got one we'll talk about here. He's at the shooting guard position. There's certainly a guy that we're gonna get. He's getting a lot of rostership love here tonight as well. So give us a minute, and we'll get on that Brooklyn net play here momentarily. Working our way down under 7K here. Obviously, McCollum was there at 69. As you mentioned, that game back and forth. If it's competitive, both of them are probably in really good spots to pay off their price point. Cam Thomas, though, is a guy that you and I highlighted a lot this morning. He is the cover of today's show. He is also the fifth highest projected roster play on the slate here. Currently, $6,600, coming off of 40 actual. Faced Golden State once this year, had 41 actual in that game. He's an absolute bucket. There's no Ben Simmons. There's a lot to like in this spot here for Cam Thomas.
Yeah, as a starter this year as well, 24 games, 23.6 actual points per game, 3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and is just fills it up. We've talked about it a lot, where Golden State is not the same team, and that's obvious, but like defensively specifically, they've just not been the same team. They're now bottom 10 in the league in defense overall, 22nd. They're 29th in the league in defense since January 1st. Only Charlotte's been worse. So I completely understand the desire to play Brooklyn. It's a good pace for Brooklyn. They play at the 22nd fastest pace in the league. Golden State plays at the 12th fastest pace in the league. So we have almost over a full possession more for Golden State per game, 10 spots faster. It's really hard not to love Cam Thomas in all formats tonight, especially this last game happened without Dennis Smith Jr., but Dennis Smith Jr.'s minutes have kind of cratered as well,
right,
with the emergence of like Lonnie Walker. But there's multiple rotation pieces out for Brooklyn that is allowing Cam to play this much. It's not only Simmons, but Dorian Finney-Smith. They're forced to play kind of like a smaller backup center with Daron Sharp and Simmons out. So that's forcing their lineups to be shifted in like a Royce O'Neal backup 5 type scenario. So everything's really just lining up for Cam Thomas. Love the multi-position eligibility as well.
Yep. We're on point guard, so let's bring up the news now. Cody Martin and Frank Ntilikina ruled out tonight for the Charlotte Hornets, so got to assume Ish Smith rolls right back into that starting point guard spot here this evening against the Lakers. So some value point guard news that we can touch upon. He's $3,600 on a slate like this. Where does Ish Smith prioritize for you in your lineups?
He's a solid play. He had really big foul trouble yesterday. He picked up 2 fouls in 2 minutes in the second quarter, and then he just sat for the rest of it, the final 5 minutes of the second quarter. And he played 26 minutes. So like, I'm good getting to Ish Smith. I also think this benefits Nick Smith. Nick Smith played 25 minutes yesterday as well. Him and Cody Martin and Frankie Smokes being ruled out. Like, that solidifies both Smith's minutes. Nick Smith no longer point guard eligible, so we'll talk about him in a few. But I'm good getting to Ish Smith 3,600. It's not like my favorite play of the day, but we've seen him be pretty good in these extended roles outside of yesterday. It's a really good pace-up spot for the Hornets, and the Lakers are middle of the pack when it comes to defense. So I'm okay getting to a $3,600 Smith for sure.
Okay. Between the guards we've discussed already and those who we haven't under Cam Thomas, any love for anybody else down here? Podziemski, Monk, Dinwiddie is at 5K. Any of these plays for you?
Dennis Schroeder at 59 is another guy that I'd be getting to. He has played a lot of minutes lately, 36 minutes in the double overtime game yesterday, 30 plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. No RJ Barrett, as we alluded to. So, you can look to Schroeder for extended run. He's about a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy, sans RJ Barrett, plus all the traded pieces this year. So look for Dennis Schroeder to get extended, whether he's off the bench or starting. Podziemski is definitely in play at 5,700. I expect him to start. There is the caveat that Moses Moody and Dario Saric are both back. So like, minutes distribution will be interesting, even with Wiggins off the floor. But Podziemski has been great in his last 2 games since like being extended. 39.
He's always played around 27, correct. 28 minutes anyway. So, the difference is, does he play 35? Right. And they've been hesitant really to play Moody often. So like there's a chance that Podziemski's above Moody on the depth chart at this point anyways. So
I mean, he's definitely, I'm not questioning whether he's ahead of Moody. Right. That's for sure. He's ahead of Moody. I'm just questioning, like you said, we're getting the last 2 games, we've gotten 34 and 39 minutes. And I know one of them aided by overtime, 37 minutes the game prior in the Philly game. I'm just saying a more healthy team, sans Wiggins, what do the minutes look like? Like, yes, no Chris Paul obviously helps. No Andrew Wiggins obviously helps Podziemski. I'm not like, that wasn't my intention wasn't to like make it sound like I think he's not going to play. He's getting a lot of ownership too. I think the field is catching on to like, all right, well, this guy is just really good. Back-to-back double-doubles in different ways. I mean, 11 rebounds last game, 14 assists the game prior. So he is a very multifaceted basketball player who also can score the basketball. 4 straight games, double-figure points. It's just, all I was saying is the 34 to 39 minutes live with the way that they're kind of how their lineup is constructed. Brooklyn's going to run like kind of a big starting lineup when you think about Cam Thomas at the starting point guard, Bridges, Cam Johnson, Claxton, and Dinwiddie. I guess in theory, Podziemski can guard Dinwiddie and.
Yeah, he's 6'4". He's a bigger guy. He's not.
That's fine. So. Yeah, he's definitely. I mean, I wrote him up. He's in the playbook over at fantasyfilm.com, so I like him.
Somebody that took his over 23.5 PRA today. We're cheering for him. Shooting guard position. A lot of guys we've discussed already.
I wanted to ask just a couple of questions. Dennis Smith Jr. is getting a lot of ownership, 3,700. Any thoughts there?
I mean, we know what DSJ is, right? He can be a fantasy point per minute freak. Saw that 15 minutes against Utah, in that blowout win, gave you 25 fantasy points. He's going to get on the floor. He's going to take a couple of shots. He's pretty good defensively. He's fine, but his minutes are just seemingly capped. I guess we don't really know what they tend to do with him, but I don't know. I think they're playing him for game environment, probably more so than anything.
If Toby's ruled out, and they just gave not Shabba, Springer.
Springer.
Any thoughts on Jaden?
Yeah, we talked about this last night. I think he's fine. I think he gets minutes probably anyways, given the rotation that they have. So, I don't think I prioritize any of them over to the other. I mean, Springer would be maybe the most appealing of the group, given the lack of depth they have there. But I don't really care for Ish Smith all that much. And DSJ could play no minutes now. Like, I mean, probably unlikely, but he could. We don't know what Vaughn does with that team. So, shooting guard. What do you make of Paul George not being on the injury report? Do we just assume he's full go minutes wise?
I mean, we've seen it fluctuate since the groin injury kind of has popped up, right? It's been 27 in a competitive game against Detroit, and then 33 in a competitive game yesterday against Miami. So I assume he's full go. The price is really good, but I'm kind of treating it like, I don't know how you can safely project anything more than 33 minutes. And I feel like even projecting a 33-minute Paul George is kind of sketchy on a back-to-back. So I would say 30, somewhere between like 30, 31, 32 minutes would be like your ceiling for Paul George in this spot, which is fine. He's Paul George. He's 7,900. It's really cheap. You could.
I mean, he hasn't been that great,
but he hasn't been great. But he hasn't been great from fantasy.
Yeah. So he is there. DeJounte Murray we touched upon briefly, not to just kind of roll by him, but he's there. Ingram at 77. Mikal Bridges at 72. Again, all the Nets. There's 6 of the top 9, I think, ownership guys are from Brooklyn. So, Mikal's there at $7,200.
I mean, this tier is fine. DeJounte has a very nice floor if you want to play him in cash. Ingram would obviously be more of a priority if Zion were to be ruled out, but that seems like Zion's trending towards playing. We'll see what they ultimately do with Zion. I'd probably only get to Ingram if Zion's out. Bridges, we know he has a ceiling. He's going to be the one net that we can firmly say is going to play monster minutes on a nightly basis, has a monster ceiling, but there's a lot of games where you get low 30s fantasy points and you're like, but then you see the 17 first half or first quarter points. You're like, man, wish I played Mikal Bridges tonight. So, I think this tier is all fine and dandy. Nothing that I'm prioritizing.
All right. Mid-tier of guys, Cam Thomas has that dual position eligibility. There is Reeves at 68. A lot of guys you mentioned last night kind of all have the same skill set. There is Oubre at 65. You talked about Jimsky already. Got Horder down at 51, Norm at 5K, Trent at 48. Those are all, I think, fine plays, but Lonnie Walker was the guy I alluded to earlier. Getting a lot of ownership love. He's 4K. Minutes have been great. We know he can be an offensive bucket here. Of the guys that I kind of scrolled through to get here, where does Walker prioritize for you?
1.
Okay.
There's really I hesitate to say that he's really solidified his role because you've said it already. It's Jacque Vaughn. Jacque Vaughn's mindset changes from game to game. He's a Will Hardy light, right? It's very hard to predict minutes when it comes to Brooklyn. But in those first 2 games, it's worth mentioning, Dennis Smith Jr. didn't play the Philadelphia game. So you're okay, 30 minutes, maybe he picked up some without DSJ. Well, DSJ played the 2 games prior. So there's no Finney Smith, there's no Ben Simmons. They're just shorthanded, and Lonnie can play multiple positions, and he's a literal bucket. So he's kind of like Cam Thomas. I like Lonnie Walker quite a bit tonight, 4K. He would be first amongst the others you mentioned. And not to say I wouldn't play those others. I would play Kelly Oubre Jr. if Tobias Harris is out because he's the second. He'll be the definitive second best option on the team. So if you want to get to Oubre, Sands, everybody else, I'd be okay there. Bogdanovich would be interesting. He'd play a whole boatload of minutes if we get Saddiq Bey, DeAndre Hunter news with more definitive answers because both guys are listed questionable. So if you want to get to Bogdanovich, and if both those guys are ruled out, that's fine. I'm interested to see what the Toronto starting lineup looks like without Barrett. I assume it's Bruce Brown, but we'll see. I love Monk in tournaments. No one's really gravitating to Malik Monk. When he's going well, he's really going well. He has GPP winning upside. He has GPP crushing floor. 41, 44 fantasy points last 3 games. So Malik Monk also in play. Gary Trent, perfectly fine. 4,800, should play a boatload of minutes with RJ Barrett out.
Yeah, good. And, he's another guy we always talk about, right? Liable to knock down 5 threes. And if you get a guy that can get down there and knock down 5 threes, the scoring upside of him is pretty strong there. Maxey over 23.5 points. Are we confident in tonight? It's me, Ernest. Yeah, I think it's possible. Again, he goes through these. The volume of shots, no doubt about it, will be there. This is, it's not the greatest matchup, but it's not a terrible matchup either. I mean, there's no rim protection for Dallas. Luka and Harry don't play a lot of defense. They'll put their best defender on Maxey in this game, but it's all about can he knock down shots. The other day he didn't. 2 days ago he didn't miss. So certainly possible. Guy Cam the man. Toby plays. Do you prefer PJ or AD or Toby and Miles? Probably Toby and Miles here. Or AD versus PJ Washington. I don't know. I like the AD the most. I don't know if I trust PJ Washington there.
PJ is going to come off the bench.
Yeah.
I'd probably go the first pairing, PJ AD. Leaky Black is starting for Cody Martin, which I think is
not
very funny.
So we have Brandon Miller as the point guard tonight.
Charlotte.
Point Miller.
Miller, Bridges, Leaky Black, Nick Richards, and then 5th starter. They started Ish and Bryce McGowan's yesterday. So I assume Ish is the fifth starter, and then McGowan's is just
on
out
the
of
bench
the
again.
like just probably out of like just straight out of the rotation.
I mean, they have no talent on that team, so I'm not too surprised. Small forward position here. Again, Kawhi Leonard 8,900, even with Paul George where he's at, one of my favorite plays on the board here today. I even did an alt bet line on him of 30 plus points tonight. Got some plus money on that one. For him, we talked Toby. There is both Brandon Miller, Jonathan Kuminga down here. Not to dismiss LeBron James. If you want to pay 10K for him, go for it as well. What are your feelings on the top half of small forward tonight?
Salute to LeBron, Monday night in Charlotte. Seemingly they love the Monday night in Charlotte's on the schedule. If you want to get to him and that game stays competitive. They've been pretty good against bad teams this year, so I wanted to see if they were like lacking against bad teams, but they've been pretty solid against them, so should be walk in the park for the Lakers. Hopefully Charlotte can keep it somewhat competitive so we get full run out of AD. Kawhi, great spot. I mean, he's been nails, 48, almost 49 fantasy points over his last 6 games. Atlanta's fourth in pace, first since January 1st, and they are bottom 5 in defense as well. So love Kawhi. Not a whole lot to say about Scotty Barnes. 40 minutes last night, looked really tired at the end of the game, just stood in the corner while his team did everything for him. Fine. It doesn't look like the same guy as he was earlier in the year.
Right.
It would be like top half other than Kawhi, really, is like Tobias Harris for me. If he plays 7,400. Okay. I'm a little skeptical just considering how like he gets sick, he comes back, he plays well, he gets sick again. I mean, I know they travel a lot, it's possible, and I'm not saying, but like, was the illness actually ever gone? Like, was he playing through it? I don't know. But if he plays, such a good spot. Dallas is a bad defensive team, really fast environment for Philly. So I hope Toby plays because I would definitely have interest in 74.
Sure. You and I kind of went back and forth a little bit on this. I still think Brandon Miller is a really great play tonight. I mean, I know you talked about there have been some floor games from him. I mean, there's been a lot more recently, more recent ceiling games than floor games out of him here. As we talked about how poor the Lakers are defending guards and defending the 3-point line. He plays a bajillion minutes in games here. So even if he gets off the slow starts like he did yesterday, he came out in the second half and knocked down 10 straight points to open the third. So I think the kid's legit. Again, I don't know. I'm not really concerned putting him into lineups regardless of format here.
Yeah, my opinion's changed. I wrote him up in the NBA DFS playbook. You do a pre-show and then you do research, and my research has led me to Brandon Miller, 29% usage rate with Rozier, Ball, Hayward, Williams off the floor this year, which is a 6.5% usage bump, over a fantasy point per minute. And this is a great pace up spot. So I have written up Brandon Miller in the NBA DFS playbook. You can find at fantasyalarm.com. The only thing I wish he was still shooting guard small forward. That kind of sucks that he's just small forward.
That's true. Them taking away our his dual positional eligibility. You can go get that over on FanDuel probably. Where are you on Jonathan Kuminga tonight? Obviously had those huge games and then just 16 points and fouls out against Atlanta. Brooklyn, they are kind of tougher on forwards. Do you think Kuminga is a sleeper in this matchup? Because again, everybody's playing the Brooklyn side. If Brooklyn's going to pay off all of that ownership here tonight, Golden State has to hang around in this game long enough, right?
I haven't really gotten to much Golden State outside of Podziemski and a little bit of Curry. It's a big pace down spot. Brooklyn, since January 1st, 23rd in pace. They're also 10th in defense. So yeah. I'm kind of like, that we both have been screaming from the rooftops about playing Kuminga, and obviously he plays more than 34 minutes if he doesn't foul out. But I don't know. Like if you end up on Kuminga, you probably feel good about it because he's been so good outside of one game lately. But I've just gone different directions today.
Yeah, that's fine. Sadiq Bey available to play tonight, so he was one of the guys that was questionable coming in to this game here. DeAndre Hunter is also available to play tonight. So Atlanta going into this game against the Clippers, full health outside of Clint Capella here this evening. Where are you on the next tier of small forwards tonight?
it makes me want to vomit until I get to Cam Johnson.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. But I'm just not a lot of interest. We've mentioned the Oubre thing. I would play Oubre if there's no Tobias Harris. Clay's fine. Bruce Brown probably starts, but what are his minutes when they could just bring Shooter off the bench and play him? I just like the role that Cam Johnson's had lately. Double-digit shot attempts in 3 straight, 30-plus minutes in 2 of the 3, and he would have played 30-plus if he stays competitive in that Phoenix game. 28-plus fantasy points in 3 straight, and then 25-plus fantasy points in 7 of his last 8. So I'm just plugging and playing Cam Johnson at 5K and just kind of moving on given minutes, given injuries, given role. So I am a big Cam Johnson fan today.
Yeah, I could get behind that. Over 2.5 threes tonight, just minus 110. So definitely a good play tonight if you're looking at the betting world. Under Cam J, again, any interest? I mean, do you think Josh Green keeps playing minutes, or now that Kyrie's back, he goes back into his low to mid 20s? Like, where do you think Murphy, Hachimura, Derek Jones, anything down here for some value?
I think Green's minutes are secure. I'm just not interested in getting to him with Kyrie and Luka. It's just hard to play anybody. I think Derek Jones takes a big hit. We'll see what the minutes look like. Played 35 in that Milwaukee game. It's really hard to predict Dallas minutes in general. When they're like pretty healthy, it's just outside of Luka and Kyrie, it's impossible. So
did you see the NBA Central tweet that they're looking at a straight up swap of Grant Williams for Bobby Portis?
I saw that, and then I saw they're looking for a stretch 4, which I find interesting. They've talked about Dorian Finney-Smith, bringing him back. I think that would be a great fit for them because he's just better than Grant Williams, who they wanted to be Dorian Finney-Smith, but he's not. So I think like someone like that would be a good addition. Anyone else, like Taurean Prince is a little bit interesting to me at 4K, 33 minutes off the bench the other day. I assume they play the same starting lineup with Hachimura and bring Prince off the bench. Still think Prince is going to be the guy to play all the minutes if we're talking about this starting lineup or just this lineup in general. He spaces the floor better than Hachimura does. So Prince at 4K, Nick Smith 3,800. I just wish they would start him, but I think it is at least slightly interesting that he's played 21 and 25 minutes the last 2 games. Hasn't made any shots. He doesn't really do a lot else. But we have seen there have been a few games this year where he has made shots and Nick Smith has paid it off. I guess I'll
always take a guy who shoots but misses over a guy who doesn't shoot. So
well, and I think that's like kind of a perfect segue into, well, Nick Smith is 3,800, but then Leaky Black is 3,300. Leaky Black took 3 shots in 19 minutes yesterday. He's like kind of good peripherally in the small windows that he's been on the floor. People love him. He's actually from North Carolina. He played at North Carolina. Like this is going to be the best moment of Leaky Black's life going up into today. Like he's literally starting for his hometown team after playing in his hometown college, after growing up in his home. Like,
you won't find him in any lineup that I build today. I'll tell you that much.
I know. Oh, he's 3,300, and I'm not saying you have to, but also when you look at the ownership forecaster that was recently updated, didn't change much from the morning. Larry Nance was 3,200, and he's been like the most popular value of all the entire day. I'm not comparing the two because Larry Nance is a better fantasy producer than Leaky Black.
Larry Nance has 15x upside tonight. Like he can go for 40 here.
Larry Nance also may play 16 minutes.
Yeah.
And Leaky Black might play 35. Steve Clifford is a wild card. That's my only like.
If you got 35, if you could guarantee 18 minutes Larry Nance, 35 Leaky Black, I would bet that Larry Nance would outscore him. We've seen him. We've seen him have that ceiling. I mean,
I'm not saying I'm not interested in Larry Nance either because he's 3,200. Yeah. That just seems wrong. But
it would be cool if he had a better positional eligibility than just center because there's a lot of centers we do like this evening. So
yeah, I mean it's fair. He's only backing up. Like, he is not playing alongside Valanciunas at all. It's just he's been Valanciunas, the straight backup to Valanciunas. And it's sometimes the starter of the second half to Valanciunas' backup to the second half. But, like, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Leaky Black 3,300, going to start. Might play 12 minutes. Might play 30 minutes. Steve Clifford, crazy person. I am interested to see in our next ownership run where things have shifted with Leaky Black, if at all. Like, if he's moved the needle at all, just given, like, there's not a lot of expensive plays, but you can play like 3 9K players if you played a Larry Nance or Leaky Black.
Yeah, for sure. Where are you going to power forward here tonight?
Anthony Davis, who is also center eligible, obviously 9,900 is really interesting. If Zion plays, I have a lot of interest in Zion coming off one of his better games in a while, including the game winner. 36 minutes was great. He's been the primary fantasy producer and usage player when everybody has been on the floor. Zion leads in usage and fantasy points per minute, so a lot of interest in Zion. I've been a Jalen Johnson truther since the beginning of the year. Not stopping anytime soon when you consider everything he's been doing. I mean, 35 plus fantasy points in 6 straight games, 7 of his last 8. There's 50 fantasy point upside in there.
His rebounding has been crazy. His rebounding prop tonight is at the 9.5. I mean, last week it was 6.5. Then it was 7.5. Now it's 9.5. So they're almost projecting him to get a double-double now moving forward.
And it's not even like, yeah, the rebounds have been great too. Like, he's coming off a game where he took 20 shots.
Mm-hmm.
In a game that Trey played, in a game that DeJounte played. Like, I know there was overtime. He took 20 shots. He also is a very good passer, very willing passer. In a game with a 243 total, kicking to open shooters is ideal. Like, there's a lot to like about Jalen Johnson in this environment. Getting the Clippers on the second leg of a back-to-back. He's a energizer bunny. So I really like Zion, Jalen Johnson, and Toby obviously is power forward eligible.
Mobley update here. He's going to have his minutes cap increased to 26 tonight. So, just mentioning that because he went for 48 fantasy points in 24 minutes against San Antonio. Going to be playing 26 minutes here this evening. Does that intrigue you at all as his minutes cap continues to rise?
Not really. When I can play, like, if I found $500, Jalen Johnson has 40-minute ceiling. Sure. Or like Tobias Harris has a 40-minute ceiling, or Zion actually played 36 minutes last game. So I like to see Mobley's minutes going up to 26. He's obviously coming off an insane game. He has a really good spot against Sacramento. But he's almost 7K for 26 minutes. I'm okay with that.
If you had to pick between Mobley and Green, there's no like finding extra money. If you had to pick one of Mobley or Green tonight, where do you go?
Probably Draymond, but not confidently.
Okay. Just wondering, again, that's the price range, we always say like, oh, find the money. And yeah, there are pivots to be made, but sometimes you and I do this all the time. You're like, I really like everything else in my lineup. I just can't fit this one guy. And once we like, oh, I'll move down to this guy to get that guy in. And next, your whole lineup looks different. So if you were stuck at power forward, and all you had was $6,800 or less. We have talked a lot about Okongwu tonight. He's the highest rostered player overall on the slate. $5,100, has power forward center eligible. We talked about him last night when we saw that Capella was out. Like, yeah, we can talk about center and we can talk about power forward all we want, but as long as we know that this guy is being plugged into power forward, center, or forward or utility in our lineups here tonight. As a starter this year, he's averaging over 16 actual points per game. We know what he can do rebounding the basketball. Ivica Zubac was questionable.
He's ruled out.
Ruled out. Okay, just officially ruled out then. So now you're going back to that Plumlee, Daniel Tice smaller lineup here. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of great upside here for Okongwu. You and I, and I've said this in my underdog write-up today, if you've paid attention to our show, almost from game one, we've said eventually this guy is going to be the starting center for the Atlanta Hawks. He's just a better overall player than Clint Capella. Trade deadline comes, all of a sudden Clint Capella's out 7 to 10 days. Maybe the stars are lining up here.
Yeah. And if you remember also when Mason Plumlee was the starting center in Charlotte, Charlotte was the punching bag of the NBA when it came to centers. Not that they're not anymore, they're still pretty bad, but Mason Plumlee is a good rebounder. He catches lobs, he blocks some shots. Not a very good defender. It's a very good spot for um Onyeka Ngakoue. The only thing we ever have to worry about him really when he's extended is foul trouble because he can get a little handsy. Kawhi, Westbrook, Harden. There's a lot. Paul George. Like there's a lot of guys on that team that can draw a lot of fouls, and Ngakoue is a very aggressive shot blocker. So I would say that's the one thing that could derail Onyeka Ngakoue tonight from smashing at his price in a starting role. And like he played 36 minutes the other day. His backup center is Bruno Fernando. They're gonna let Ngakoue play as much as he possibly can tonight. And the good thing is he's like a smaller center. Even if the Clippers elected to go with like their small ball lineup, he can be on the floor. That's not an issue for him either. So he is a very, very good player.
He stretches the floor a little bit. He can play outside. Yeah, there's 6'8", so definitely can fit a build there for sure. A lot of these other guys we have discussed. We talked Marcus Morris a little bit on the show this morning. I mean, if Toby was out, Marcus Morris at $4,500. Only played 19 minutes there against Brooklyn. Obviously up and down production out of him here. Maxi's $4,100. You talked about him as well. What are we doing for like the real value down here?
So I do think there's obviously things to sort out with Philly. We just don't have answers with Tobias. Even like KJ Martin played 21 minutes the other day.
Yeah.
I think Morris is live for like a pretty good, like a healthy amount of run with Maxi. We talked about this on the show last night. Maxi Kleber starting spaces the floor. Paul Reed can't defend the perimeter. We've said that a couple times. When Paul Reed has
actually just got an update on this right here. Nick Nurse, Paul Reed is still dealing with an illness as of Monday, and he's limited to 15 minutes on Saturday. So,
okay, well, like that is obviously if he's still dealing with an illness, he is still gonna not play a lot of minutes. So, it is a good thing to have Marcus Morris as like you're just like, hey, Marcus Morris, you used to score like 18 points a game. Like, can you come off the bench and give us a boost? Right. I like him more on FanDuel. He's a little better priced on FanDuel, but he'd be okay. And if Toby's out, he probably starts. So we'll see. TBD on Philly news on like their front court. Any of these guys are really live to play. I wouldn't play Daniel House. That's probably where I draw the line at 3,900. I know he's not at this position, but like of their forwards, Daniel House would probably be the one guy I'd punt on and not play.
Sure. Center. Sabonis, Anthony Davis, your top two price guys. We talked last night when we built our lineup. We just plugged in Anthony Davis as our guy here. Has anything changed for you on that?
No.
Yeah. I don't really have much else to add.
We talked about,
I mean, there's a couple, there's like two centers I was in on playing tonight. It was Davis, it was Ngakoue. Would you give Pirtle a look? Like Nick Richards, 57, Valanciunas, 65, anybody here?
Yeah, I wrote Pirtle up in today's playbook. Yep. So he played 33 minutes. There was obviously multiple overtimes. He also had foul trouble in the first half. So he lost out on a bunch of run. He played 16 minutes in the second half. So he also closed that game. So if you're, a math major, 16 plus 16, 32, if that's something that you assume that then Pirtle would have been on track to play over 30 in regulation in his second game back. No Jonte Porter again, no Barrett. So they're just more shorthanded than they were. They didn't play Chris Boucher the last few games. Chris Boucher obviously could take a few minutes from Pirtle in the second leg of a back-to-back, but they're going to need Pirtle's big body, I think, if Valanciunas is like the primary center and Nance is not around, because even though Nance is getting all this ownership, he's questionable as well. So He did practice on Sunday, so it looks like Larry Nance is going to play, but I definitely have some interest in Jakob Poeltl amongst all these other centers.
Okay. With the Clippers, like, does the Zubac being out give Tice any interest to you?
No. I would rather probably just play Plumlee. He played 26 minutes yesterday. Is that guaranteed?
If Agonku moves more, right? Like, is that a bad matchup for Plumlee at all?
I think it's a bad matchup for both. I don't think it would. If anything, it would move both of them off the floor, and they would just do their small ball, where you put Kawhi, who's 6'7", 6'8" at power forward or center, and then like Russell, like you just have Westbrook guard and Ngannou or something along those lines. Harden, like we've seen all them switched on. So if anything, I don't think I think if one of them plays, it's probably Plumlee, considering he's played 26 in back-to-back games. I don't have much confidence in Daniel Tice. If someone wants to get to Daniel Tice, salute. Hope he does well for your builds. He's gonna operate as the backup center. I just don't know how much time he's really gonna get.
All right, just wanted to throw it out there with Zubac out there. You know,
Fernando. I'd rather play Fernando at 3K. How about that?
Tice used to play power forward, so I mean, like he's capable of sliding around.
There was a keyword. There was a key phrase in there.
Well, different teams different teams need to use him as different positions. So
he's also older.
Celtics played him at the 4. Yeah. So
well,
all right. Let's get a lineup build out here. Where are we starting things off tonight?
Lonnie Walker.
Lonnie Walker in at shooting guard. You mentioned Podziemski obviously earlier. Is that a guy you're still looking to plug into?
Yeah, sure.
Pod here, point guard. What's your spend?
Doesn't feel like a slate you have to spend all on. I like Kawhi 89, Maxey 91,
Leonard at power forward. We got a Ngannou here.
Yeah. Yep.
65, 75 for a couple of positions. Cam Thomas.
Yeah.
You got Walker there. No Cam Thomas there. Walker. Yeah, chat earlier said they'd play 3 Nets. What's your Nets cap here today?
3. Play 3. Yep. Because I basically those 2 plus Cam Johnson is the way that I'm also building.
All right. Guard forward detail 65, 66. Do you want to throw another spend in there? You mentioned
play Cam Johnson at forward.
Cam Johnson 7,300. What did Luka do? 27. Too much. Kyrie give us 62. Maxey would give us 56. Could do Maxey and Monk.
Yeah, I like Monk in tournaments for sure.
Example lineup for everybody there: Podziemski, Cam Thomas, Lonnie Walker, Kawhi Leonard, Ngannou, Maxey, Johnson, and Monk. Spending up on Maxey and Leonard. A little fair and balanced build for everybody here. The playbook is out for all of you who want to check that out. James, of course, will be updating it. Roster locks at 7 o'clock Eastern time here, everybody. Underdog Fantasy Pick and Plays over on Fantasy Time out as well. Give us a follow if you haven't done so already on Twitter. And like and subscribe to the channel. We go live here every day at 5 o'clock Eastern time. So you never miss a show. James and I will be back tomorrow for the live stream, breaking down the NBA slate. Good luck, everybody. Tonight, we will catch you all later.